Starting this broadcast from the United States, in just hours from now, the people of Iowa are set to brave extreme cold to reach the caucuses on Monday, and the unique style of voting will kick off the 2024 presidential race. The Iowa caucuses will signal the direction in which the Republican Party is headed. Opinion polls say that former President Donald Trump is still in a commanding lead. A new poll has put Trump at 48% among likely caucus members, with Nikki Haley surging into second place, but only at 20%. A comfortable win for Donald Trump will support his argument that he is the only Republican capable of replacing Democrat President Joe Biden. But the poll brought more bad news for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who scored just about 16%.
We're going to do very well. Fact of the matter is, I'm the only one that could possibly compete with Donald Trump in a Republican primary. She cannot win conservative or core voters, Republicans. She's trying to win, people in the other party, which is fine in a general, but you got to be able to do that. So that the reality hasn't changed, but I think what has changed is we've put in the work, and now it's time to bring that to fruition.
After hundreds of events over last year, the Republican candidates made their last bid ahead of the Iowa caucus. Even with their distinct campaign style, the Republican presidential candidates have largely focused on personal brands and personal attacks.
But I will never run against him, ever. She said this for years. Then she calls a news conference, ladies and gentlemen, I've decided to run for president. I said, that's not so surprising because I understand Nikki. She can't help herself. I understand her very well, better than anybody. By the way, she's not up to the job, okay? I can tell you that. I don't want to be mean. If I said that about a man, everyone would say, what a great statement.
The Republican primary also features many low-polling candidates, including entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy. He has promised a third-place finish in Iowa, but did not qualify for the final televised debate.
The only person to tell you that I will pardon on day one every peaceful January 6th protester, because that's the right thing to do for this country.
More than 1,600 places are expected to hold caucuses this year. Voters will gather in small groups at churches, schools and community centers. Unlike other elections, the caucuses are being conducted by political parties and not the state government.
Well, we go to the local high school. In my case, it's up at Madrid, Iowa. And we'll caucus up there. And boy, it's going to be cold tonight because that's out in the open field. If there's any wind, it's supposed to be 18 below tonight, but I'm going.
We're going ahead, and we expect that many people will turn out. Of course, we want people to be careful, but we think that turnout will be strong.
Now, to give us more insights, we are being joined by VOA correspondent Kane Faribault from Iowa. Kane, welcome to the broadcast again. What is the latest you are hearing on the ground as of now?
Well, as you mentioned, as you saw, you have to be hardy to be able to brave the weather, to be able to get out to those meeting locations, to be able to show your support for the candidate you are going to pick. Right now, the weather is definitely the story. It really isn't certain how this is going to impact turnout, because what you need is those supporters to make sure that they brave those weather conditions to get to those meeting locations, to be able to cast those ballots in person. This is an event in which you must show up in person to be able to have your voice heard.
Absolutely. And referring to the low temperatures, Trump has in fact said to the voters, and I'm quoting him, listen, if you have to vote and then you have to pass away, it's going to be absolutely worth it. That's what he said to his voters. I want to ask you, Trump, who is actually leading in almost all opinion polls, if he is scared about voters not turning up, how are the others doing, Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis?
Well, you have to have that enthusiasm. As you mentioned before, I think that you saw the polling shows that President Trump, at least this is polling that was conducted in the days leading up to in the final weekend, actually right before the caucus will happen. Donald Trump has about 48% of that vote. In second place would be former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, and then in third place would be Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. And so in order for the polling to meet the expectation of turnouts, you have to get those supporters that have committed to supporting you to make sure that they show up at these events. And so I think really because former President Donald Trump has such a commanding lead, the race for second place is the story right now, and it's going to determine who is going to have that momentum leading out of Iowa into the next contest, which is New Hampshire.
All right, Ken, before we wrap up, for viewers who are watching this outside of the United States, could you quickly explain exactly what caucuses are and how they actually lead up to the main elections that's going to happen in November this year?
So a caucus is effectively a meeting or an event that happens where you have to show up in person to be able to cast your ballot for the candidate of your choosing. And so what happens, aside from your presidential preference pick, is a lot of party business. Since 1976, both the Democrats and the Republicans have had the caucus night at the same time. And what that does is not only does it determine who the nominee of Iowa voters is in the parties for their nomination for president, but also there's a lot of party business that's conducted. Delegates to the state and national convention are decided at these meetings, and so are many other forms of party business. So there is some more work that happens at these caucus meetings, but again, it's an in-person event. Now, for the Democrats, it's widely expected because President Biden is an incumbent that he will win the preference for Democratic voters. They've actually enabled for the presidential preference part of their caucus to have mail-in balloting this year. But for the most part, in a general normal cycle for the Iowa caucuses, you have to show up in person. And certainly for the Republicans, who this is the story here, the center stage is for the Republicans, they need to attend in person to be able to pick their candidate for the Republican nomination.
All right, Kane, thank you so much for decoding U.S. politics and how the entire process is going to play out in Iowa, of course. Thanks for getting us all those updates.
Thank you.